Okay, so point 3, we started with grant your blessings that my mind may go towards the Dharma. Then grant your blessings so that the Dharma may go along the path. And now the third is Lantrupa Silva Chinchilla Sol. Grant blessings that the path may clarify confusion, or that the path dispels delusion. So again, Lam Trulpa, Lam means path, Trulpa means confusion or delusion. Selva means to clear, to clarify, and Chinchilat Sol means please grant your blessings. So here we have again, So it says, in samsara, we experience various obstacles, sufferings, and hardships. These are what is here being called confusion. But they are not established by their own nature. They're not inherently existing. So therefore, they can be abandoned. The point is that our negative emotions, such as our anger, aversion, irritation, hatred, and so forth, that negative emotions are the opposite, the greed, the grasping, the attachment, the clinging, are all based on the third klesha, or afflictive emotion, which is our unknowing, our ma rikpa in Tibetan. Rikpa means to know, and ma means we don't know. So it's our delusion, our confusion, which leads to our anger and upset and our grasping and clinging. So this is what needs to be removed, right? We have to clarify that confusion. So the confusion we're trying to clarify is our misunderstanding of how things really are. Because that is what underlies. And now there are two basic misunderstandings. They're subject-object, our dualistic mind. So the dualistic mind has a self-existent, clearly unchanging I at the center of everything. The whole universe revolves around me and mine. So that includes also family and so forth. And this sense that I, no matter what else is happening, I am something clearly established and inherently unchanging and independent of everything else. There's me. And from me, then there's everything else, which is other. Also self-existent from their own side, but different, unconnected, out there. And so this is how 99.9% of the world perceives their reality. And we're all wrong. It's not like that at all. That is our basic delusion. We do not see things how they really are. And so we suffer. Because we're always off-center. We are projecting an illusion. And so the fundamental meaning of the Dharma is to wake up. To wake up from the dream of our illusion that we think is so real. When we're sleeping, we dream and we believe our dreams. You know, while it's happening, we believe it, and even our body believes it, you know. I mean, if it's a frightening dream, then the heart beats. And if it's an exciting dream, I mean, we can look at dogs, you know. Sometimes they're asleep and their legs are all moving, you know. They're obviously having an exciting run in their dreams. And the body believes it, you know. It's running away. And then they wake up, we wake up, and we think, oh, that was just a dream. Now this is real. But from the point of view of an enlightened being, we're still dreaming. This is also a projection from our mind. It's not how things really are. And so therefore, in all Buddhist traditions, the real point of all the practices that everybody's doing is just to wake up. And what happens when you wake up is that we recognize that all these things which we thought were so obviously real and true are all based on a lie. They're all fiction. It's not like that at all. So, specifically speaking, as I said this morning, in Buddhism there are two levels of fundamentally of meditation. Sorry. So the first is shamatha, which is designed to get the mind more quiet and more focused, to develop, to cultivate our ability to be aware, to be mindful, to be present, and not swept along endlessly by all our thinking. Nothing wrong with thinking, as long as we recognize it's just thinking. The problem is that when we think, we believe our thoughts. And that is a pity, because often our thoughts are not really telling us the truth. They're only telling a version of the truth which they see. So we should learn, once we learn how to really observe the mind, we can recognize it's just thought, they're just impulses of energy, they're not real. Why do we believe it? So, once the mind has become a little quieter, and ability to observe the mind, to witness rather than be absorbed into the mind. One Lama described it like being in a train watching the scenery go by. So, you know, there can be good scenery, beautiful scenery, there can be slums, whatever is out there, but it's all, we don't stop the train and get off. We just watch it going by. We don't have to identify. It's just the passing scene. So, when that ability to observe is well established, then we go on to the next level, which is the vipassana. Vipassana means insight, or clearly seeing. And this is where we examine what is going on in the mind and ask it a question. We swim like fish, you know. We swim in an ocean of thought. And like fish who could not tell you what is water, because that's, you know, that's their reality. They cannot separate themselves from the water enough to be able to know what is water. Likewise, normally we swim in this mental ocean and we don't recognize what comprises that ocean. So therefore in Vipassana we start to look and take a thoughts and ask ourselves, what is a thought? What is a thought? We're thinking, and believing it and building up on it and, identifying totally with our thinking. After all, most of our identity is based on our memories and our identity with our race, our nation, our gender, our social class, our education. This is me. And all of that is thought. All our memories are just our memories. Somebody else comes along and tells you, the same event, their version of it, and no, that can't be right. Everybody must have experienced that. Two people come along and discuss the same thing from before, and they have a totally different version. But they're wrong. I mean, they have to be wrong, because I don't remember it like that, and I'm right. So here, when the mind is going along and we're watching it, what is a thought? What does it look like? Where does it come from? Where does it go to? Really not verbally asking so much as just big question mark, looking. What is a thought? Since we predicate our whole life on our thinking, what is a thought? What's it feel like? Where does it come from? And then, of course, who is thinking? If I am able to step back from the mind enough to observe the mind, then obviously the observing and the observed have some kind of difference. So then, who is observing? And then if we say, well, obviously I am observing, then number one question, who am I? And so Vipassana really is about peeling off the layers of the onion to find the core of the onion and ultimately recognize there is no core. Which doesn't mean, when Buddhism talks about no self, non-ego, doesn't mean we don't exist. Obviously we exist. But we do not exist in the way that we tell ourselves we exist. And this is our tragedy. Because we are so much more than who we think. But we deal with that in the third part, the fourth part. So, here he's saying, okay, problems come from desire, hatred, delusion. Where do these kleshas, these afflictive emotions, come from? Well, they come from our ego. This is why in the morning when I said with the mala about karma, if we cut the string, the sense of an actor behind the action, then that dissolves all the karma and the karmic results. That's liberation. What are we being liberated from? We're being liberated from the ego. What is an ego? An ego is the sense of me and mine as something solid, self-existent from its own side, independent of all the other egos out there who are nothing to do with me because they're not my ego. And so there's me, and then there's all the others. And then we wonder why we suffer. So the source of our delusion, here we're having grant blessings that the path may clarify the delusions. We need our path, our Dharma path, to clear away our delusion about how things really are. And if it doesn't do that, if it just makes a bigger ego now a good spiritual Dharma ego. Yeah, look at me, I've done all these things, I've done all these practices, I've done all this study, I can recite all these names in Tibetan, Chinese, Pali, Sanskrit, and goodness knows what, and I know what they mean. Up maybe, because this is going to be under here, then it's going to be... Okay.
Where's the other little mic?
It's hidden now. She pushed it down.
She pushed it right.
Would you like me up?
No.
Down further?
No, or just here.
Stick here?
Yeah. Yep, that's perfect.
Okay. So the point is that the path, the Dharma path, must be for clarifying our confusion. If it doesn't, if it merely substantiates our delusion of a self, a separate individual self, then it is not helping. So these meditation, once we have gotten to the point where the mind is a little bit calmer, and our ability, especially our ability to observe, our mindfulness is strong enough, then we have to really investigate what's going on inside ourselves. And really look to see, well, if we have such a strong instinctive sense of I, where is this I that we are so attached to? And so a lot of meditation is dealing with, as I say, removing layers and layers of our false identification with something which from the very beginning has never existed in the way it seems to do. This is the point. We're not destroying something which was existent and now we're making it non-existent. From the very beginning, it isn't the way it appears to be. So that, in Buddhist terms, is called shunyata. Shunyata, which means emptiness. Emptiness doesn't mean nothingness. It means that we have this instinctive feeling that things are very solid and self-existent, just how we see them, including ourselves, including other people and other objects outside of ourselves, that everything is very solid and real and just how we see it with our conceptual thinking mind. And so we have to really examine and look and see how our conceptual thinking mind is deluded, doesn't see things clearly. And so scholars emphasize reducing external phenomena into its essential. Like you could take, let's see something which is, okay, take the clock. So, all right, look, it's a clock, right? So then we say, this is the scholar's approach. Scholar's approach will say, okay, now we are labeling this clock. Okay, where is the clock? Is the clock this part? No, that's the cover. Well, then how about the figures? No, those are just the figures. Then we undo this and we look inside. Well, is that bit the clock? Is that bit the clock? Is that bit the clock? No, that's that, that's that, that's that. And then if we take it down further, then even what seems to be very solid is indeed just atoms. I mean, in Buddhism and Hinduism, they knew about atoms. I don't know about protons and neutrons, but they knew about atoms. And so then you divide the atoms, and then you divide, and you divide. What they're saying is that you can never find anything which exists from its own side, independent of everything else. That everything is actually interdependent. And when you put it all together, we stick a label on it and we call it a thing. But we can never find the thingness of the thing. I mean, people spend 20 years debating this. You're getting it in 2 minutes. But essentially what they're saying is we can never find something which from its own side self-exists. Everything self-exists only within interconnection with everything else. And then we just stick a label and say, give it a name, and think that makes it a thing. And that now it's self-existent. But if we look for the thing, we can never actually find it. And the fact that however much you reduce something down and down and down and down and down, never can find anything that you can catch hold of and say, this is it, is a shorthand called emptiness. When my first physics lesson, when I was about 11, I asked the teacher exactly this question. I don't think I was good looking for in last life, but I did ask the question, if you take something and you reduce it down and down, ultimately what do you find? And she said, well, there are neutrons and protons. And I thought, she doesn't know. And lost interest in physics at that point. Because, of course, you know, if there are neutrons and protons, then you must be able to subdivide neutrons and protons, which, of course, you can. And what I was trying for her to say, but I didn't know it, was, you know, back to energy and space. But even science recognizes this. This is why His Holiness and other lamas are very interested in science from both sides, from the quantum physics side and from the side of neuroscience, because both of them are very close with the philosophical views which were expressed more than 2,000 years ago. And so, you know, there is this anecdote of a scientist saying to His Holiness, but I don't know how you could have understood all this without machines and without scientific background. And His Holiness said, well, we don't know how you could understand it without meditating. So this is the point. But the thing is that if you do it through actual inner realization, then it transforms. If you just merely see it through machines, it doesn't really change your actual perception. They don't actually see. I mean, they can't put their hands on a solid rock and make an imprint of their hand. How many quantum scientists can do that? Because they look in their machines and they can see, yes, actually, it's just, you know, space energy, but they haven't realized it, so it doesn't transform anything. But if you've actually realized it, then what seems so solid is no longer so solid. Anyway, here the important thing is not so much just the interdependence and inherent emptiness of external phenomena, but of ourselves. So the meditator's way is to go through doing the same deconstruction of our sense of ego, which again we see as something very solid, real, unchanging, and me. And so then meditation is for looking for this substantial I, and through genuine insight, not thinking about it, but actually seeing it, we see that this is a fundamental delusion. It's like a hologram that we create, but it has no substance. And so the next one is about our Buddha nature. So if we have no substance, then what is there Does it mean we don't exist? How are we doing? Okay, we've got lots of time to deal with Buddha nature. So, okay. So, therefore, every practice of Dharma is to overcome and purify our ego delusion, right? And so taking precepts, doing virtuous actions, purification, mindfulness, prayer, meditation, all of this is really just to develop the ability and to create a kind of container for the genuine realization, which is the realization of the nature of the mind. That's what it's all about. It's about waking up from the sleep of our ignorance. We have to wake up. And for that, meditation is the most useful. But within meditation, just also keeping that genuine awareness throughout our day, which supports us. If we only can be aware when we're sitting on our cushion, it's not enough. We have to learn how to observe the mind, and then observe the mind as much as possible throughout the day, as much as we can do it. It's very important. So, yes, so we have, that's all that. I'll do with that all in the other one. So we'll go on to the fourth one, which then will include everything else, okay? Trupa Yishi Suchawa Chinjilabtusol. Grant blessings that delusion manifests as primordial wisdom, or let confusion dawn as wisdom. So the Tibetan, it says Tulpa, which is the delusion. Yishe, or jnana, means that non-dual innate wisdom. There are two kinds of wisdom. There's prajna, sharab, which is a more intellectual wisdom, and it develops through our study and our understanding. And, we can start with very little wisdom, and then gradually through study and practice, our wisdom begins to grow. But yeshe, ye means from the beginning, primordial. She is part of the jnana, the knowing side, the wisdom side. It's primordial wisdom. So this is what is innate within us all. We do not have to develop it. What we have to do is recognize it. So the nature of our mind, our true nature, the important thing to remember is that we are not who we think we are. Just keep that in mind. Whoever we identify ourselves with being, that is the part we are playing, the role we have taken on for this lifetime, but it's not our true nature. So yes, you play your role. And those who are deeply realized beings, don't mean that they end up as a kind of having dropped their their manufactured mask, therefore just sit there, blissed out, and that's it. Anybody who has met very realized masters know that they are more present and more charismatic often than ordinary people like us. We are still so caught up in the mask we are wearing that we don't recognize it's just a mask. It's just a part we're playing now, but it's not our true nature. It's like an actor. It's a little bit iffy because of Buddhism and actors. But nonetheless, it is almost like, without pushing it too far. It's like, if you are an actor and you're on the stage, you're playing Hamlet or Lady Macbeth, but when you come off the stage, if you still think you're Hamlet or Lady Macbeth, you're in trouble. While you're on stage, you play it with all your heart. But something inside you knows this is not real. You know in the depths of your being, even though you're playing Hamlet like anything, you're not really Hamlet. And that's the point. So, we can play our role, but it's important to know it's not really, it's just a role. So who are we?